A comet blazes across the night sky above the Ohio Valley, and people in village after village lift their eyes and wonder what it means. For one Shawnee leader, Tecumseh, it feels less like a random sign and more like a warning. The land is changing, and if native nations do not stand together now, they may lose everything. Tecumseh grows up in a world already torn apart by waves of settlers, broken promises, and wars between empires that treat indigenous homelands as prizes to be traded. From a young age he sees burned villages, disappearing game, and surveys carving lines across land that was never for sale. Those early wounds harden into a single idea that will drive his whole life: no tribe can survive alone. Tecumseh is Shawnee, but he refuses to think of himself as only Shawnee. As he watches the United States push west after the American Revolution, he sees a pattern: divide the tribes, sign separate treaties, take more land. He decides to flip that script. Instead of dozens of nations negotiating alone, he imagines one united front from the Great Lakes to the Gulf, from the Mississippi to the Appalachians, speaking with a single voice. The land belongs to all of us, or none of us. This is not nostalgia. It is strategy. Tecumseh understands that if the United States can mobilize millions of settlers under one government, then native nations must answer with unity, not just courage. He is not alone. His brother, Tenskwatawa, the prophet, sparks a spiritual revolution that fuels Tecumseh's political one. Tenskwatawa calls on native people to reject alcohol, stop buying manufactured goods, and turn away from the missionaries who tell them their ways are sinful. He says the Creator wants them to return to traditional life ways, to live clean and disciplined, and to stop selling land piece by piece. Their village at Prophetstown in what is now Indiana becomes a magnet. Delegations from dozens of tribes arrive: Shawnee, Potawatomi, Miami, Kickapoo, Ojibwe, Wyandot, and more. Prophetstown is not just a town. It is a test run of Tecumseh's vision of a Pan-Indian confederacy. Tecumseh travels constantly, moving from village to village, from the Great Lakes down toward the Creek and Choctaw homelands. He speaks with blunt clarity. He tells leaders that no single chief has the right to sell land that belongs to all native peoples. He warns them that every treaty signed under pressure today will become the legal excuse for new seizures tomorrow. Some leaders, exhausted by war and loss, he is demanding a different view of sovereignty, one that sees native nations as shareholders in a shared homeland. Instead of isolated fragments the U.S. can pick off one by one. The United States sees the danger in Tecumseh's idea. American officials are less threatened by a single battle than by a long-term alliance that could block expansion into the Northwest Territory. They respond with the same combination that has worked before: negotiation, bribery, pressure, and force. While Tecumseh is away recruiting in the South, U.S. forces under William Henry Harrison advance on Prophetstown. Tension builds as rumors swirl that Tecumseh's Confederacy plans a broader uprising, and that the British in Canada may support them. The United States is preparing not just for a fight, but for an opportunity to break this fragile indigenous unity before it fully matures. Without Tecumseh present, Prophetstown becomes vulnerable. Tenskwatawa, under increasing pressure and eager to prove his power, authorizes an attack on Harrison's forces at Tippecanoe in 1811. The battle is fierce but disastrous for the Confederacy. The Americans burn Prophetstown, destroy stores of food, and use the victory to brand Tecumseh's movement as a threat that must be put down. When Tecumseh returns and sees the damage, he is furious not only at the U.S., but at his brother's impatience. A dream of unity has been wounded, not destroyed, but the momentum has shifted. Then comes a larger storm: the War of 1812 between the United States and Britain. Tecumseh sees this imperial conflict as another chance to defend his people. If he allies with the British, he believes they might force a border that protects a native buffer state in the Great Lakes region. Tecumseh becomes a brigadier in the British Allied forces, leading native warriors in battle after battle. He does not fight for the British flag. He fights for a political outcome where his Confederacy has room to live. For a brief period, his leadership and the chaos of war make that outcome seem possible. But empires do what empires do: they negotiate for themselves. As the war drags on, British priorities shift. They care more about defending Canada than guaranteeing long-term native land rights. He confronts British officers for retreating and abandoning forts that shield native villages. Still, he stays in the fight, because he knows that if the United States wins without resistance, his people will be left with nothing. The final break comes at the Battle of the Thames in 1813. British troops pull back. Native warriors are left exposed. Tecumseh falls in battle, his body lost and his exact burial place unknown. With Tecumseh's death, the United States quickly declares victory not just over an enemy commander, but over the idea he carried. The dream of a single, large native confederacy in the old Northwest collapses under the weight of defeat, broken alliances, and relentless American expansion. In the years and decades that follow, treaties continue to chip away at indigenous land, leading to forced removals, the very future Tecumseh warned about. Yet his warnings were never just about loss. They were about pattern. He understood that once a system is built on broken promises and land theft, It will keep running until it is deliberately stopped. Tecumseh stands as one of the clearest examples of forward-thinking indigenous leadership in the face of a colonial machine. He thought beyond his own tribe, beyond his own generation, trying to build a structure that could withstand the pressure of a rapidly expanding republic. His failure was not because his vision was weak, but because the forces aligned against him were massive and deeply committed to expansion at any cost. The US government liked to present itself as lawful and civilized, yet it treated treaties as temporary tools, not binding commitments. Tecumseh called that out directly, and he paid with his life. If you strip away the dates and uniforms, Tecumseh's story is still uncomfortably current. It forces a question. What happens when one side in a relationship sees land, people, and promises as sacred, and the other side treats them as negotiable assets? His life is a reminder that unity is not a romantic slogan. It is hard, risky, and often punished when it threatens power. But it is also the only thing that ever seriously slowed down the loss of indigenous homelands in that era. This episode is part of a much bigger journey through Native history. Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Geronimo, the Trail of Tears, the Code Talkers, Chief Joseph, Black Elk, Chief Seattle, the Peacemaker and the Iroquois Confederacy, and now Tecumseh's Pan-Indian vision. If you want these stories to keep moving forward instead of fading into footnotes, stay with this series, share it, and check the other episodes. The past is not over. It's just waiting to see what you do with it.